Hello and welcome to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. I'm Tharandu. If you're a business decision maker, a busy professional, or even an economic mover, a shaker, either way, staying ahead of the game in any business field, in any field of economics, requires the latest insights and access to opinion from those who are at the forefront of some of the economic decision making. And here in Bisnomics, that's exactly what we intend to deliver to you. Today, our focus is on something little different to what we have been doing over the past few weeks. Today, we are going to speak about the development sector. In fact, we have a guest and an affiliated party from a very vital economic development partner of Sri Lanka, who is none other than Reed Ashleman, who is the mission director for USAID for Sri Lanka and Maldives. Reed, welcome to Bisnomics. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Reed, let's talk about the role that USAID plays, because we see this word USAID. An ordinary citizen would see the word USAID maybe in certain parts of Colombo or maybe in some projects, but they might not really know the actual role played by USAID. So my question to you, what is the role played by USAID in developing economies worldwide? And most importantly, what is the affiliation with the US government? Let's start with that.
Okay, well, thank you so much. United States Agency for International Development, otherwise known as USAID, is the development arm of the US government. And we operate in over 100 countries worldwide. And I think our objective, obviously, is to support the countries we work in terms of supporting their journey, their development journey to self-reliance. Our assistance is all grant assistance. It comes from the American taxpayer, the American people. It's meant to promote goodwill in the countries that we work in. We want to be good development partners. And our objective is simply to promote free, peaceful, healthy, educated, and prosperous countries, again, in terms of their journey, their own journey to self-reliance. And I think that besides the fact that we're not a bank, we provide grants, not loans, another distinguishing factor of our approach, I believe, is empowering locals to lead that development and lifting up communities. We like to refer to it as a hand up, not a hand up, not a handout.
Nice. I really like how you put that. Let's talk about the presence of USAID in Sri Lanka. Now, I believe you've been here for more than half a century. And what kind of development assistance has been given over the last few years? And let's get into details about some of the signature projects, because I believe there's a lot of work being done, but a lot of people really don't know about.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a good question. We have a lot of history to cover. Let me start with 1956. 1956, 5 years before USAID was even established, there was a landmark development cooperation agreement signed between the United States and Sri Lanka, Ceylon, at the time.
At that time, yes.
And then since that time, we've invested through grant assistance more than $2 billion in development assistance. And I would say every development sector over the 60 years plus that you can imagine, whether it was health, education, infrastructure, economic development, promoting open and responsive, governance or democratic institutions. We've done just about everything, whether it was agriculture, education. But in terms of signature projects, I don't have a whole laundry list to share with you now. That would take too long, I think, for this interview. But let me just name 3 signature projects.
For sure.
In the 1950s, I think we had supported the development of a nutritional supplement called Treposha.
Okay.
And maybe you've heard of that, or maybe some of your viewers have heard of that. But that nutritional supplement was was provided to mothers, children, and we even supported a feeding program for school children in the schools. I'm happy to say that Treposha program was very well known at the time, It was an example of a really solid, stellar nutritional program around the world. And then in the 70s, we focused more on agriculture. USAID supported the government of Sri Lanka in accelerating the Mahaweli Development Program. And so we, as a partner, focused on rural development and watershed management. Moving along the timeline a bit, in the 1980s, I think another signature project I can throw out there is USAID partnered with the Colombo Stock Exchange to modernize the stock exchange and the capital markets. Another project I have to mention, because of the devastating 2004 tsunami, we pumped $135 million worth of development assistance into Sri Lanka after the tsunami to rebuild some of the infrastructure. And the signature project I think that I would mention is the rebuilding of the Arungambe Bridge in the east. And then, of course, another watershed period in our long development partnership with Sri Lanka is the end of the Civil War in 2009. And so we focused on supporting, again, kind of jump-starting the economy in areas that had lagged because of the Civil War.
Especially towards the north and the east, I believe.
Exactly. And so we did that through, at first, after the war, we partnered with big corporates, whether it's Cargill's, Haley's, Mass Holdings, and a whole list of other private sector partners to really create jobs and build up and support social economic integration, I would say.
There was a lot of issues, I believe, with some of the war widows in that region where they've lost their husbands and now they needed employment, or even for some of the cadres who were part of the terrorist groups earlier, who now needed to really get into employment. It was a long part of the social integration for them as well.
Exactly. We supported apparel factories that had in multi-ethnic communities.
Understood.
Where where they would work together, eat lunch together, and so there was obviously
little things go a long way. Isn't
there was obviously an economic push and support, jumpstart, I would say, an economic jumpstart, but also it included the social integration, as you rightly put it. I think I would also just mention at this point that since that time, we have really expanded our work with the private sector, focusing on jobs and skills development. And one of our more recent projects that just ended less than 2 years ago was Biz Plus project.
Excellent.
Now, the Biz Plus project invested directly in 60 companies all over Sri Lanka, not just in the north and the east. I think we were in 15 districts across the whole country. Again, supporting, leveraging $1 to every dollar that the business put into their business to grow. We added $1. That project then leveraged $25 million of private sector funding, created at least 8,000 jobs. And so we've continued that focus ever since 2009, but have expanded it across the country.
Reed, I'm going to ask you a very direct question on this regard. As a Sri Lankan, I'm quite pleased and happy to see the amount of development assistance that we are getting as a country, and thank you very much for that. In return, what economic benefits, I mean, the US right now, from economic viewpoint, the United States is the world's biggest economy still, and at the same time, the world's biggest consumer. By supporting developing economies, what kind of economic benefits does the United States get in return?
Well, first off, I should go back to an earlier point I made that all of our assistance is from the American people and first and foremost promotes goodwill. And that's what we are about as a good development partner. And of course, we believe that a strong, Sri Lanka has made great inroads from the 50s to being a middle-income country. We want to see Sri Lanka be a high-income country, an advanced economy. And,
because when each of us are strong, I believe the whole world is strong.
We're stronger together, a free and open trading partner, for example.
Excellent.
So I mean, I think that we do continue to have a strong focus on partnering with the private sector.
Let's talk about how the private sector could actually reach out towards USAID and partner and coordinate. What are the options available? Let's say for someone who is watching this program, who is a who's an
Right.
upcoming private sector and entrepreneur, what opportunities are there and how can they get more information? Can they reach out to you? What are the channels and opportunities available for them? This is the platform to share that.
Well, that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it so that I can share some information. First, though, let me say that we welcome private sector input, into ideas, innovation. We want to know what the challenges are out there for the private sector. We want to pool our resources, but not only pool our resources, we want to pool our expertise. As a development partner working in the economic growth sector, we do have lessons that we've learned. We would like to hear about the lessons and challenges that others have learned. And so just, very much welcome private sector folks and partners, would-be partners, to reach out to us. We're always looking for new partners and new and innovative ways to partner with the private sector. Because at the end of the day, it's the private sector, especially focusing more on outside the Western region, that's really going to lead to broad-based and more inclusive economic growth that will be the engine for growth for Sri Lanka to reach that high-income advanced economy status.
And Reed, just to share with you, I'm sure you're
Yeah.
aware of this, but the bulk of the Sri Lankan economy is actually driven by especially the small and medium enterprises.
Exactly.
As we speak.
Exactly. So now let me get to some more specifics. I would like to mention 3 projects. 2 projects are very new. They've only been launched late last year. And because of the pandemic, we may not have made the initial progress that we wanted to, but we did launch them. They are starting. We are looking for partners. The first one I'll mention is Sri Lanka at 100.
Sri Lanka at 100.
Sri Lanka at 100. And so what does that mean? It means by 2048, I think that's 100 years
Absolutely.
after independence, Sri Lanka, or before that, let's hope, but certainly by then, Sri Lanka will be a high-income country and advanced economy. That's the development objective that we're supporting with Sri Lanka at 100. This is implemented by Stax. Stax is a Boston consulting firm. However, they have a localized company here in Colombo.
So you're working in collaboration.
We're working in collaboration.
And does the government also play a role together with you in this? Are they also in some kind of collaboration towards
We work
this?
very closely with the business chambers, and we seek advice from various government stakeholders as well. But it's primarily focused on mid-market companies.
Understood.
And reaching out and directly supporting mid-market companies. So these are companies that have made great progress. They are already employing people. They're selling things.
Noted.
Many of them are selling things abroad. So the idea is, let's look at these mid-market companies and see how they can grow to that next step to become real engines for growth for Sri Lanka's future. We've onboarded 7 companies already.
Excellent.
And they are now in this platforms receiving various business development services, advice, and we hope to bring on many more. And if you go
Good luck with that.
with that project, as well as associate
Nice.
direct mid-market companies that we will assist, and then bring in other companies that will associate with us. So if you Google Sri Lanka at 100 USAID, you'll find all sorts of information about how you can apply to become a partner with us on that. And again, that project's just started less than a year ago, and will go on for several years. The second project I'll mention is also a new project. It started about the same time, and this gets to your point, sir, the SMEs, the small guys. So it's not just
Small but important.
small but important, not just the mid-market firms, but the small firms, and many of them are in the informal sector, and do need a hand up as well. And so we are focusing through our PSD, that's the acronym, Private Sector Development, PSD project, implemented by Palladium, an international organization that does this type of work all around the world, but it's localized here.
Understood.
And their job is to reach out to SMEs, increase their financial literacy, for example, work with them on business planning, work with them on access to financing, and then there's a high priority of women, of supporting women-led enterprises. and enterprises that are employing women, because we do believe that bringing more women into the workforce, including women entrepreneurs, will also be part of that engine for growth and development. The third, so reach out to PSD, USAID, Google it. You'll find information about how to partner with them as well. And then the third project I'll mention is ULead. Now, ULead is a
I believe we'll be hearing about that more towards the end of this program as well.
Exactly, because that project's been tried and tested. It's been here that's been on the ground a couple years already.
All right.
And in fact, the Sri Lankan government has recently asked us to expand that project, and we are looking at doing. We are looking
well done, and thank you.
We are looking at doing that. I mean, we work very closely with the government institutions like, say, the TVET, the Technical Vocational Education Training Center, and then our role in this project is to bring the private sector partners to the table. And to understand the skills that are being taught now to youth in the vocational schools, and looking at the industry needs, addressing any mismatch, working on placing career choices with youth, working on internships.
Because right now, Reed, if I may interrupt,
sure, please.
We see a huge problem where a lot of the youth, after they are what we call grade 11 examination or what we call O-level, they drop out from school, and most of the time they end up just driving a tuk-tuk, as we call it. And that is, from an economic perspective, very unproductive, because most of the time when they don't have a hire, they are just hanging around doing absolutely nothing. Whereas if we can train these people on some skill, and today we see there are companies in countries like, for example, Australia, which are advertising and targeting Sri Lankans and saying, look, if you are good at culinary skills, if you are good at, let's say, serving in restaurants, we need you. We need your skill here in this country. So I think it will open up a tremendous amount of economic opportunities, not only locally, but globally for these youth.
Absolutely. I mean, improving job skills for youth and aligned with what industry needs, including ICT. And we do partner.
It's a digital economy after
all. Yeah, we do
today.
partner with Sri Lanka Software and ICT Association and other, SLASCOM and other business chambers in this project are close partners. And I couldn't agree with you more that improving the skills of youth so that they are employable will again be part of this engine for growth to take Sri Lanka to that advanced economy status. And I guess I would say also that part of this project, we introduced entrepreneurial training.
Excellent.
So you may not be satisfied with just getting a job. Maybe you want to be, as we refer to it, your own account holder.
Your own boss.
Your own boss, and become an entrepreneur. And so we have actually worked very closely with the government institutions like TVET and others to introduce entrepreneurial training into the curriculum.
Excellent. What is the role of USAID in terms of promoting stronger ties between countries? And most importantly, how has been the recovery of small and medium enterprises in the Sri Lankan economy from the experience of USAID? This and more we will discuss after this short break. Stay tuned. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. We are in discussion with the Mission Director of USAID for Sri Lanka and Maldives, Reed Ashleman. Reed, let's talk about the role that USAID plays in promoting democracy, human rights, and governance across the world. And let me also be very candid with you here. We hear a very common comment from so many different corners of the world echoing, not just towards USAID, but towards so many other developing agencies, that when a country's development assistance arm is coming in and giving assistance and support, they are also indirectly trying to push their country's political agenda. This is a very common complaint. I'm sure you've heard this, you've seen these comments from many corners of the world. What is your comment on that? And in general, like I asked, what is the role of USAID in promoting democracy, HR, and governance? You did mention about this earlier, that this matters, but how do you really make sure these get implemented through your efforts?
Okay, that sounds like a two-part question. Let me take the second part first. We do view democracy and rights and inclusion of vulnerable groups and good governance as building blocks of sustainable development just like we would view good health, basic education, and agriculture productivity and economic growth. These are all elements of reaching self-reliance in that development journey. So that's kind of how we look at it from a development optic. I mean, institutions that are efficient and effective and responsive to their citizens, and that include the institutions that citizens can participate in, so that citizens can participate in with their country in its development journey. These are all ways to empower people, including vulnerable populations. I can't speak for other development partners. What I can say is that we coordinate all of our assistance with the other partners to make sure that we're not duplicating what they are doing, and we view our role as to be a good development partner and support that journey to self-reliance. And we view our partnership as a positive thing for Sri Lanka. And I guess I would ask you or your viewers to go out and talk to our beneficiaries and hear directly from them.
Get the clear picture.
Get the clear picture from the beneficiaries. I mean, I met someone just before I came in this room that said, oh, in the 1990s, out in your waiting room, he said, oh, in the 1990s, my first salary was from a USAID project. And we started talking about all the good things that project had done. So I guess I would turn that question back to you and your viewers. Ask our beneficiaries. In terms of some of our democracy, rights, and governance programs, I can give a couple examples that in the Sri Lanka setting, if you like. I mean, one is the Parliament Media Center. So the Sri Lankan Parliament has a vision to become a modern or model parliament, not only in Sri Lanka but in the region and beyond. So when the Secretary General's office came to USAID and said, "Would you partner with us in refurbishing our media center and providing some equipment?" We were happy to do that as a good development partner. And I'm happy to say that that partnership has now yielded a brand new kind of refurbished media center with state-of-the-art equipment, all provided through grant assistance, soundproof recording room, the works. And I understand that upwards to 150 journalists can access that media center at Parliament. And as a result, the citizens are more informed, the Sri Lankan citizens are more informed and educated about the important work that Parliament does. Another quick example I might point out, kind of in the inclusion area, vulnerable groups area, women in need. Gender-based violence is an issue around the world in practically every country.
And unfortunately, I believe in some of the South Asian countries especially, it has become like a taboo topic which people don't want to talk about.
And I think that's the first step, exactly.
We need to get the conversation and the dialogue going.
It's not, I think every country faces this problem, so then the question is, what are you doing about it? Women in Need is a local NGO that is doing something about it. And so we partnered with them to expand their 24-hour hotline service across all of Sri Lanka, so that women that needed the women that were abused or experienced gender-based violence could reach out on the hotline. They could receive professional psychosocial help, and not only that, they could be referred to the public sector support services, emergency services for food, shelter, and safety. This program was very much promoted also by the Sri Lankan government. A third example I might just leave you with in kind of the inclusion, the rights of vulnerable groups area is our partnership or grant to the Center for Handicap. And so we learned through the Center for Handicap that there wasn't enough quality, affordable prosthetics for the disabled to access. And so we worked with the Center for Handicap to introduce, design, and manufacture an affordable foot model. That is, and our project has ended 3 years ago. Okay. And that foot model is still being manufactured and sold today. An example of something that was very much sustainable, and it's being sustained.
So some very good work done there, Reed. Happy to hear that. How strong are the development ties between Sri Lanka and the United States? And how does USAID contribute towards strengthening these development ties?
Well, I think the first thing to say there is after 60 years plus, it's been an enduring relationship. It's been an enduring partnership, and I think that's how we like to think about it.
Probably one of the longest relationships you will have could be?
It's, for USAID, yes, because like I said, development cooperation started here 5 years before USAID existed. So you're exactly right. And I think another thing I would say about the strength of our partnership, development partnership, is that we are here. We are here in times of need. I mean, we're on the ground, we're here. I mean, this was demonstrated in the 2004 tsunami for sure.
Understood.
You know, when we pumped in the $135 million grant assistance to help support the rebuilding. But even in more recent times, I mean, when there's flooding, we've worked with your government, we've pre-positioned some flood relief supplies. And then I think now, in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, we have also tried to be a good partner. We've, by gifting hospital equipment across the country in various hospitals that are addressing the pandemic.
Reid, let me just cross-question you there. With regard to this assistance being given, development assistance being given, I'm sure not only in Sri Lanka you do this, USAID does this worldwide. How do you ensure that the support that is provided by USAID is being spent or used for the best interest of the public? Is it a case of giving the assistance and saying, all right, we gave the assistance, or do you have a strong follow-up process as well?
Well, first of all of our projects are designed based on kind of analyses, I would say evidence-based designs and lessons learned from previous projects, research from academia, discussions with the public sector, our host country government counterparts, and also with the civil society and the private sector to understand the challenges and the situation. And so that's the first thing. I think the second thing I would say is we always try to put Sri Lankans out front. And, you know, and this is how you create ownership. I mean, Development 101. The host country needs to own and lead it, and as a good development partner, we need to support that.
Give the guidance, but let them take the baton and run.
Yeah. And I'm happy to say that, I mean, I work with my Sri Lankan colleagues every day. Some of us are teleworking now, but generally speaking, we're in the office, and I have far more Sri Lankan staff than I have American staff in the office here in Colombo. And many of these staff are top experts in their development sector fields. And they've been with us for years. And they are put out front. They are leading the discussions, they're leading the designs, they're leading the management of the contracts and grants, they're monitoring the contracts and grants. And then just to extend that a little bit further on ownership, all of our implementing partners and grantees, the far majority of staff are all Sri Lankan. And many of our grants are 100% Sri Lankan. So I think you know, putting Sri Lankans out front is a demonstration of kind of how we strengthen our projects and make sure that they are benefiting, you know, the Sri Lankans.
Reid, on a final note, I would like to ask you, how do you see the recovery of small and women-owned enterprises, especially emerging out of a pandemic? Now, as I said, small and medium enterprises are the backbone of our economy.
Right.
And at the same time, you, as someone who is on a daily basis working with some of these small and medium enterprises as well as women-owned enterprises, you are there, you see the action, you see what's happening. Mm-hmm. What is your comment on their emergence out of this pandemic-infused downturn which we see coming or stemming from late 2019 and across 2020?
Well, first off, I mean, everyone's been hit hard. And some have been hit harder than others. And the second point I would make is that many of these small businesses are in the informal sector. They're still in the informal sector. And so there's not as much data and information in the informal sector as there is in the more formal sector. But I think what we can say, you're exactly right. You know, women entrepreneurs, women employees have been hit harder than men. And part of it is because women sometimes curtail their hours or put less hours into their business because they need to go home and take care of, during this pandemic, children that are out of school. That's one example. Another example of how this pandemic has impacted women employees is the apparel industry. As we know, the women make up a large population of employees in the apparel sector, and when, whether through the downturn, whether it was a layoff, or whether they needed to curtail their hours to take care of their families during the pandemic, they were certainly impacted. I think I would like to plug one more thing on PSD, the Private Sector Development Program,
Yes.
which I referred your viewers to. We've actually, since the pandemic came about, we added another $2 million to the PSD project that is specifically earmarked to be granted to selected small businesses that were impacted by the pandemic. Applications are being reviewed as I speak, and I expect the first grants to be made next month.
Excellent.
I think some final maybe takeaways, if I have a bit more time on this, is another observation. We have seen that those firms that are more financially literate, that are closer to their customers, that have found ways to innovate, that have better business plans, maybe reserve funds, they have fared better and weathered the storm better than others. But that's what we're all about, empowering the private sector to be that engine for growth, building on the legacy of 60 years, and supporting Sri Lanka's journey to high-income advanced economy status.
And thank you for doing all that through USAID, Reed. After this short break, we will hear from a partner of USAID on the projects that are actually taking place and what exactly has been the development assistance that they've received from USAID, and what kind of a model we could look at in terms of having development assistance moving forward. Thank you very much, Reed Ashman, for having joined us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
And please do continue the good work you are doing for our country.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll be back after this short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics. Before the break, we heard from Reed Ashman, who is the Mission Director for USAID Sri Lanka and Maldives, about the role that USAID plays in economies worldwide, and especially in Sri Lanka, in providing development assistance from the USA, and also the different facets of development of an economy that they look into. Now you might wonder, from the viewpoint of Sri Lankans, from the experience of Sri Lankans, what does it really mean to work with USAID, and how effective have some of these projects been? To discuss just that, for this segment, we have joining us Ms. Vindhya Silva, who is the Partnerships Director of ULEAD. Vindhya, welcome to Bisnomics. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Tharindo. Thank you for having me.
So, Vindhya, let's start with ULEAD. Reed did mention about ULEAD. What does ULEAD exactly do? What does this project exactly do?
ULEAD is funded by USAID, which is a 7-year program where we launched in 2017. It's primarily designed to support USAID's efforts to create more employment opportunities for youth and women in Sri Lanka, where we are working across the Sri Lanka, developing skills, basically work readiness, entrepreneurship skills of young people in Sri Lanka, also creating a lot of sustainable self-employment opportunities for youth across the country. So we have been operating for 4 years in Sri Lanka now, and mainly focusing on few key different areas, where starting from career guidance, providing career guidance, career counseling and placement services for youth across the country, providing them the opportunity to select what is the right career for them using psychometric and personality testing tools, where we create the awareness as to what skills they need to work in today's labor market, which is quite competitive, as we know. We are also working to improve quality and relevance of vocational training and education sector in Sri Lanka, where by improving, developing curriculars as well as improving current curriculars, developing capacities of teachers, instructors and career counselors and so on. We also have a greater gender focus in our project, where we are striving to attract more young women into workforce, into labor force participation. More broadly, I think we are doing a lot of communications, outreach campaigns and creating awareness among youth, what careers available for them, what new opportunities, what new skills they will need to strive in today's labour market. We mainly focusing on 4 high growth potential sectors, including tourism, ICT sector, construction and commercial caregiving sectors. These are, we believe, industries that are creating jobs in volume for our youth in Sri Lanka. I think one unique feature of ULEAD project that I would like to highlight is, thanks to the design of USAID, we've been able to work with all stakeholders who are educating, training, preparing and employing youth, so across the value chain. On one hand, we have where we're working closely with our government counterparts. We work with Ministry of Skills Development, Ministry of Youth on our youth entrepreneurship development, as well as Ministry of Education, supporting their career guidance programs across the country. And also Vocational Training Authority, TVEC, and all training and vocational education bodies who are in the vocational space for the same objective.
Sounds like quite a wide scope project.
It sure is. It sure is.
I would like to ask you now, since you are in the forefront dealing with the issue, with the burning issue of youth unemployment, how dire is the youth unemployment situation in Sri Lanka, and especially since you mentioned about getting more women into the workforce?
Correct.
Do we see a trend where outside Colombo or the more rural we go, mind you 80% of the country is still rural, but do you find a trend where the more rural you go, there's a higher tendency for women not to enter the workforce, or is it now changing? What is your experience on this?
Actually, Tharindu, I would say overall unemployment level in Sri Lanka has remained stable over the years, although youth unemployment specifically has been a pressing issue. If I recall, 2016 National Labour Force Survey highlights that youth unemployment rate of age between 15 to 35 youth stands at 11%, which is a significant percentage. And also they account for more than 80% of total unemployment population. So this has been a pressing issue over the years. And in ULEAD project, in 2017, we conducted a primary labour market assessment, which was carried out by Verite Research, where we had the opportunity to interview more than 2,000 youth across the country, more than 200 plus employers, 400 plus entrepreneurship students, to really understand the issue at hand. But some of the interesting insights that we got to highlight the regional disparity that you spoke about is we have more than 85% of unemployed youth are from rural areas. And also more specifically, provinces like Southern, Central and Sabaragamuwa are the highest provinces with highest provincial youth unemployment. And you mentioned about the women's unemployment percentage. Unfortunately, we have more than 5 million working age women in Sri Lanka who are not part of workforce.
Wow, wait.
Let me get this right.
Pool. So 5 million working age women. Our entire labour force is somewhere around 8 to 9 million.
That's correct.
There are different estimates. And but still we have another 5 million women who are eligible to work, who are of the working age, but they are not working. Is it voluntarily or it's just that they don't have a job?
There are many reasons behind for it, Tharindu, but unfortunately this is a large talent pool that we haven't been able to utilize, especially for private sector oriented jobs.
Correct me if I am wrong, India. This is more like we are sitting on top of a gold mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's hugely underutilized, and what we have seen is these facts from these surveys has really sort of helped us to understand the issue in detail and design ULEAD project activities accordingly. We believe bridging the skill gap in these high growth potential sectors that I mentioned earlier are very important for the economy as well as for the country to move forward. And to elaborate a little bit more on the work that we have done in the ULEAD project, so we have worked across the country, but mainly focusing on 15 priority districts which has highest youth unemployment. So our focus has been mainly on those districts, where through our regional programs we have provided career guidance and services, placement services for more than 51,000 youth across the country.
Wow.
Also,
good job.
Also with training and upskilling support, really to that help them build their foundational skills they need to find a job as well as to maintain a job, which is quite competitive. And also I spoke about the vocational sector work that we are doing. We have improved more than 60 curriculars that is currently being taught in vocational schools, and through those we have trained more than 18,000 youth to improve their vocational skills so that they are employable faster.
Understood.
And one such intervention that I would like to highlight is when we first hit by the pandemic in March last year, all our education programs, in-person trainings were halted, and the biggest challenge we had was to find ways, how do we keep youth engaged, how do we make them to learn from home continuously during the downtime. And USAID rapidly responded to that, and we designed and launched an online program called Stay Home and Learn, where we premiered a short film which highlighted the importance of career guidance, and we have more than 190,000 youth reaching to that, as well as with support of our private sector counterpart. We formed an online training campaign which talks about, which called 21 Skills for 21, which talks about the importance of key skills for 21 century.
Right. Vindhya, let me also quickly ask you on a final note here about some of the entrepreneurship projects that you see, maybe through ULEAD or through USAID funded programs, successful entrepreneurship projects which you see that have taken wings through the support and guidance provided by USAID. Some success stories that you would like to leave us with.
Correct. So ULEAD has been working especially with grassroots level entrepreneurs, doing many workshops on entrepreneurship development and skill building workshop, as well as business mentoring support. We believe is very important for young entrepreneurs today. We do work closely with Department of Samurdhi, especially in rural outskirts, where one of the recent events that we conducted, we created more than 400 new businesses among young entrepreneurs through this upskilling, mentoring and training support, where more than 85% of them are women-owned businesses. And one such success story that we met during one of these workshops is one lady from Matharavya who had a lot of passion and determination to start her own business, but didn't have the right training, know-how and business mentoring support, where she's dropped out from school and had 3 children, married, has been plucking tea for almost 10 years in her state, in the neighboring estate, but she always wanted to start her own business, where she started cultivating cinnamon and pepper in her home garden. And in 2019 she participated for one of the ULEAD workshops, where she had the opportunity to get that technical knowledge, know-how, as well as mentoring support, where she now has her own successful spice business as well as a restaurant that she's running. And it's one just one success story that I could highlight.
Very inspiring to hear
very
as
inspiring.
well, Vindhya, and definitely I, together with the team at TV1, we wish you good luck in inspiring more youth, assisting more people to really strive for their dreams, I would say realize their dreams, and definitely grow the economy as well. Good luck to you as and to Team ULEAD, and also to USAID for continuing the good work.
Thank you, Tarinder. Pleasure to have you.
5 million ladies who are women who are eligible to work are still struggling to get proper employment opportunities. That's almost a little less than 25% of our total population. Some good work is being done, but more work has to be carried out. And we definitely wish Team USAID and ULEAD success in their future endeavors, so that our economy can strive forward towards being a stronger and a more successful one. I will see you with the next episode of Bisnomics. This is your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes.